He says, I'm not a member, but I give you a check.
Really?
I was standing right next to him. Of course, they only check doesn't bounce. And Wazer says, no, I don't even care. Wise.
That's
Still with the zinger. 12:30, Ruben.
oh man.
Yes.
12:30.
Okay, as we get
Check the chief has right about soda. Soda. You check the soda. Hard score. Two by it.
Right after.
yeah, no, I didn't have a chance yet. So hopefully today I'll get a chance. No, I know, I believe
I
you.
don't think I'll show it here.
You just.
I don't think it's gonna show it inside there either. I know Gittin is 2 volumes. That I know. Okay, as we assemble, gentlemen. Okay, we will, I will start the learning sponsors. A year of learning, Isaac and Evelyn Blachor, in memory of his sister, Chaya Rachel Bas Issa. Friends of Leonie Meiselman, Leah Sabra Bas Chanok Sundel. Friends of Malaskotsky, Moshe Zeligren Mordechai. Martin Lipman and family, in memory of his wife, Malka Chana Bas Pinchas. Friends of Herb Jeremiah, Tzvi Ben Ze'ev. Friends of Sam Coleman, Shmuel Ben Yaakov. Friends of Gideon Lazinski, Mordechai Shlomo Ben Meir. A month of learning, Malin Haran Haller, in memory of his mother, Fega Bas Yaakov. B. Pizer, in memory of her stepfather, Avram Michal Ben Shmuel Halevi. Jill and Perry Meltzer, in memory of her father, Yaakov Ben Yosef. Andrea and David Dolney, in memory of her mother, Edel Sina Bat Shimshon. Friends and students of Rabbi Shalom Kornblum, Rav Shalom Ben Mordechai. Haran and Mel Haller, in memory of her father, Yosef Eliezer Ben Tzvi Hirsch. Mark Scher, in memory of his father, Mordechai Ben Menachem Mamis. Mark Linder, in memory of his nephew, Eretz Paul Ben Sirlus. A week of learning by Kayla Hano, in memory of her father, Chaim Yehuda Lei Ben Betzalel. Susan Fruchter Kramer and Shelley Kramer, in memory of her mother, Bela Bat Yeshaya. Amen. Okay, we have today the 28th, Julia David, in memory of her sister, Malka Freda Bas Yerucham Vesara. Julia David. Okay, that's it. Amen. Shem is having Aliyah, Crank, Rafia, Velti, Yeshua, Shem Latzliah, and Lechol B'nai Israel, a good Gaben Shkiar. Okay, just a quick reminder again that if you are interested in going to the Siyum on Thursday at 4 o'clock at Century Grill, please let,
Now is the dead.
this is the deadline. Okay, please let Hershey know.
You have Harvey coming?
This who?
Harvey, Harvey Greenberg.
If you, Harvey Greenberg, are you on? Okay, I don't.
Baba Rebbe did not like the word deadline, like due date.
Due date. Good, thank you for sharing. I can understand that.
Does that affect me?
There must be something in his holy words that
Right, deadline, I understand it.
I'd be more concerned about a live
Well, that would be his one.
Michael's leaving today.
Who?
Michael.
Michael Rebel? Okay, that's good. Okay, okay, I want to go back to start this morning on Samach Gimel Amud Beis, okay, towards the 4 lines from the bottom, exactly. Okay, exactly. Okay,
I have a question about that.
you have a do, but you're not going to ask that question at the pool.
Inside joke.
running water or stagnant water? Does the whole mitzvah also come on fats count? Running water I can use for a mikvah. Makes sense. But
Also,
water
you
that's
can't
in the
use-
water, what is it? And is it in a certain dies over there and it's not going anywhere?
Could be
Okay.
learned with them,
Yeah,
sorry,
okay.
Ted.
No, I understand your question. Okay, our example. Okay, let's go into I'm gonna answer you using the example to get back in the Gemara.
That's what I was hoping
Right.
you would do.
So what happens? So the person has gone down, we said, into this cave where there's a pool. Okay, and the question was, what happens if there's a corpse there?
Yeah.
Right.
Talk about it, Bob.
Okay, now we're talking about a pool still in okay, we don't know how the water gets in there, whether it's rainwater, whether there's an underground spring. Okay, I'm following your question, Sid, right? So I don't know what the source of the water is, okay, as to whether their water then flows out of the cave or it's continually in the cave. Okay, but all I know is what happens when Meshi Pipik goes in to immerse in that cave,
or go swimming.
okay, or go swimming because he wants to cool off, thank you. And what does he see there floating? Some sort of lizard.
We're finished with Yitzchak and we're now on Sharon.
Right, okay? And he sees a lizard floating there. Now, if the lizard is swimming, that's one thing. Okay, a gecko. No, we want a lizard, a gecko is gonna run away. Okay, not an alligator, please.
But first of all, today we don't know which are shrutzim, so please don't use lizard, just call it a shrutzim.
Okay, all right, in any case, all right? So that's the point. We don't know what the source of the water is, the flow of the water in and out, things like that. We don't. Okay, all right,
Yeah,
answer it.
okay, all
Don't know.
right. Okay, so, but I've understood your question and I wanted to lead it right into the Gemara because the Gemara starts up, right? Sipa, something is floating, all right? Okay, Einam mitam'a le'inyan sheretz. Okay, and according to this item, that's whatever, right? If it's some sort of a sheretz, okay, all right, what's the situation? It's not going to render, right?
unless he touches.
Okay, in other words, the issue here is not the issue of Ohel, okay, because he's in the cave, okay, but the issue of Maga.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
okay, so what happens? Why? So it's not going to do that. So why? Tanya, Safek Tum'ah Tzipa, if you have a questionable status of Tuma, and remember, we always got to keep in mind the idea that we said Safek Tuma B'Rishus Harabim is what? Okay, Tahor. Safek B'Rishus Yachid is Tameh. So we've got to keep that principle in mind. But here, the Bright is telling us Safek Tuma Tzipa, that if it's a floating sheretz and we don't, in the situation, Bain B'Kalim, Bain B'Karka, whether it's in a utensil or it's in the ground, brain, Tahara. Okay, so that seems to, for the moment, seems to overrule our general principle of Bereshus Harabim or Bereshus Hayach. It seems, right? So what happens? Rabbi Shimon disagrees with the Tanya, with the author of the Braita, the Tanakama in this case, and says B'Kalim Tme'ah, if it's in a utensil and you have contact with it, that is going to render you Tameh. B'Karka, if it's on the ground, okay, what happens? Okay, it's Tahara. So now we go to Gemara, and who immediately asks the question. Okay, fine. We understand that Rabbi Shimon disagreed with Tanakama. What is the basis that Tanakama, who says, regardless of how the water is contained, okay, contact with it is still going to be tahara, right? It's a suffix. That's part of the whole issue. Right, Avrami, thank you. My Tama de Tanakama, what's his reasoning? Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Abdumi. Steve, he says as follows. He'll base it on or try to base it on a pasuk. Right, Bechol hasheretz hashoretz. Now that's only part of the pasuk. What does the rest of the pasuk tell us? You should note in the art scroll, it gives you the whole pasuk, right? Which says, all right, it uses a phrase later on, right? Where is the sheretz doing its thing? On the land. That's what the pasuk says.
Insurance is dead.
Okay, but it's there on the land is what the pasuk says.
Doesn't say on the land. It just says sheretz.
Sheretz hashoretz al haaretz is the rest of the pasuk. B'chol hasheretz hashoretz al haaretz. That's what the pasuk says. I got support from about Korah. Okay, so plus I memorized the pasuk. All right. Kol makom shehu shoretz. That would seem to apply any location where this dead sheretz, okay, is doing, right? Uktiv, and then it goes on, and it also says in the pasuk, al haaretz, on the ground. Okay, so that's what he's basing his haketzad. In what way could that be? I'm translating haketzad. Vadai magao tameh. If it was very clear, certain that he had contact with it, he would be tameh. Safek, exactly. Safek magao. If it's only a safek, a questionable tahor. That's the point. Why? Because he's okay. So that his implication being of Tanakam, in other words, Rabbi Yitzchak's arguing, since the pasuk says al haaretz, okay, so therefore, if it's not al haaretz and it's also a safek, I therefore can darshan that that's the point. Okay. Okay. All right. So what happens? The Rabbi Shimon. So what about Rabbi Shimon? Okay. After all, we just have a Rabbi Yitzchak says we just have the Tanakama base it on a pasuk. All right. And he can darshan that pasuk that way. Rabbi Shimon Maitam. Amar Ula. He cites Ula in the name of Ula. Ktav Achma Ayan. I'm going to give you a different pasuk.
Ula cites him. Ula is 5 generations later.
Okay, so citing the pasuk Achma Ayan, a flowing source of water. Okay, here Sid connected with your point. A flowing source of Ma'ayan. What is that? Uktiv Yitma Ad Ha'aram. Okay, and therefore it says in that case he would be Tameh. Ha-ketzad, what's the situation? Sipa b'kelim, if it's enclosed in a container, right? It's not flowing, right? Tameh, that's why he would say they're Tameh.
Why?
Because it's enclosed in a container.
You're the container, it's leaning over the
He
container.
touches the animal that was floating in a container. Okay? Bekarka, but if it's in the ground, okay, and it's a suffix. If it's in the ground where it could be a source of water that's flowing, okay, you have such thing as underground springs, okay, okay, well, right, bekarka tahor, that would be the explanation, okay, to give Rabbi Shimon, okay, so that's what we see there. Okay, Tanu Rabbanan.
If it's alive in the container?
Dead.
Alive is nothing. We're only dealing with dead.
Dead sheretz. And it's suffix, okay, again, whether it's contact. So now we get a bright. As we go into this brighter, we're going to see, okay, a whole series of assumptions. If it's this, what if it's this? If it's this, what if it's this? If it's on this, what if it's on this? So on and so forth. Okay? All right, Tanu Rabbanan says a Braita. Kol hanitlin vanigrarin, anything that's carried and dragged, right? What? Yeah. Right, carried and or dragged. Sveikan tameh, says this writer. When it's a doubt, it's tameh. Mipnei shehein kimunachim, because it's as if they are at rest. Okay, that's the point. Vahanizrakim, continues the Braita, but if it's thrown, sveikan tahor. Okay, then when it's a doubt, it is tahor. Chutz min kazayas hames, with the following exceptions. Okay, a piece of flesh from a corpse, the size of a kazayas. All right. Secondly, v'hama'ahil al pnei tum'ah. Okay, because the issue of ohel there. Okay, on something that's tummy. V'chol davar, third exception. V'chol davar shemetamei milamala kilamata, and anything that is going to be rendered tamei from above or below. La'atuye zav v'zava, and that includes the example of a zav or a zava. So if they sit on something, it's tamei.
Princess and the
Right? Exactly. Okay, so they sit on something, it's going to be matame going down or as well as going up. Okay. All right. Okay. So now Rami Bar Chama, he's the wise guy in this shir. Okay. Okay. All right. What? Okay. He asks the following. Rami Bar Chama asks, Mate Bakli. Okay. Uklit saf al pnei hamay. What happens if the sherets, right, die? But it could be a corpse, right? Okay, dies in some sort of contained container.
A floating coffin.
Okay, a floating coffin might be an example. Okay, but it doesn't have to dafka be a coffin either. Okay, could be a boat, right? Ukli saf al pnei hamayim. And the container is floating on the water, right? Mahu, what's the status then? Okay, like the example, you see a dead body in a rowboat, canoe, or whatever. That's a good example. All right, so he asks, but klia aslinam, do we interpret it based on the utensil, the container? Oh, batar meta aslinam. Or do we follow and say because of the coffin, because of the corpse? Is that the issue? Okay, what do we do? So now we're going to develop this further. If you want to say batar kliyas linen, that we follow after the canoe, okay, the utensil. Mate al gabe sheretz mahu. What happens if this corpse is on top of a sheretz? Okay, what happens?
And we don't care if the container is sealed or
irrelevant.
And we don't care whether the mace is a Jew or a guy.
Has to be
It has to be a Jew.
Usually we assume, okay, usually, well, okay, later on in the Gemara, the Gemara is going to discuss a situation where it will tell us what's the difference at times between how a Jew is buried versus a Gentile. Okay,
Now, Baker, does the corpse have to be enclosed in the container? Or does it have to?
well, if
It's just the corpse is
the
not
corpse-
touching the water.
the corpse
but
is
the
not
thing
floating
is
itself,
touching
it's
his stuff.
inside something.
It's
It
inside.
doesn't have to be totally contained. Doesn't have to be sealed. That's the point. Okay, so what happens? Okay, made agabe sheretzma. Kevan dahai tumas erev. Since we say that the sheretz is only, so to speak, tumas erev, okay, and only by maga and by you have to wait till it's right the end of the day, sundown. Bahai tumas shiva, and the corpse is tumas shiva. What about that? keman demachta tuma b'kli dami, do we say then that it's like the tuma is inside a container? That's what it's compared to. O dilma tuma smichata he. Or perhaps we're going to say that it's a combined, it's all a single tuma of a single mass. Okay, the two together. What is it? Furthermore, v'im timselomar, and if you want to say keman demachta tuma b'kli dami, that it's as if it's resting inside a container, right? V'tame vadai, and it is a valid tuma. Sheretz al gabe nevela. What happens if this sheretz in this situation is on a piece of nevela meat? Unevela tzafa, and the piece of nevela meat is floating on the water. Mahu, what's the situation? Okay, what is it, right? Kevan de travaihu tumas erev. Since we're not talking about two separate levels of tuma, like a sheretz versus a corpse, but now we're talking about the same level of tuma, okay? Whether it's the sheretz or the nevela, since they're both the same level of tuma, namely tumas erev, okay? Inun tuma smichatahi. Are we going, can we assume that this is like a single mass of tuma? Okay. Or dilma, or perhaps haik sais, vahaik adasha. That one, okay, they're different measurements. One is the measurement of a kazayas, right? Which is the nevela, and one is the measurement of the sheretz, which is a lentil. Okay, right? Sheretz al gabe sheretz. If that's the case, I'll do away with the different measure. I did away with the different varieties of tuma. I'm doing away now with the different measurements of tuma. Now I'm going to say, what about sheretz al gabe sheretz? Mahu. Okay, what about that? Hani vadai chad shiuranim. If it's very clear that it is
It's two shrutzim,
okay,
so they have the
it's the same shiur, same measurement, right? Hi vadai chad shiur. Certainly they have the same measurement. Okay, so that might make me think that it's one mass of tuma. Or perhaps dilma. Kevan de mifsake mehade, since perhaps they're separate one from another, lo, that they're not considered one single mass of tuma. Furthermore, ve'im timselomar, and if you want to say now, sheretz al gabe sheretz, that you have one sheretz on top of another sheretz. Kevan de mifsake mahadade, since they're separated one from another. Keman de mancha bekledam, that it's as if one is inside of one is resting on something else. Okay, it's resting on something like we saw regarding the corpse in the boat, right? What happens? Sheretz al gabe nevela shenimucha. What about a situation where I now have a sheretz which is resting on a piece of nevela meat that's deteriorated? Okay, that's become mush. All right, so it's more almost like a liquid itself.
That water coming also.
And this is floating on the water,
No, the water itself coming.
right? Mahu, what's the
The
situation,
question is gonna be, is it considered a liquid?
right? Right, what happens? In other words, it's mushy, but it's still, think of, no, I don't want to use the word example of seaweed.
Hamburger.
No, not fried egg.
Think, for example, oil can float on the top of water, okay? All right. Yeah, this has more substance to it, right? But I'm saying that's the question, right? Kevan de nimucha, since the nevela has deteriorated. Since it's deteriorated the nevela and it's mushy, but it's still enough to float on the top of the water. Havyale mashke, do we say that this is a liquid also? O Dilma, or perhaps Hai Uchlahu, or perhaps we say that it's, since it's still some substance to it, in other words, it's not totally deteriorated, okay, that there's still some substance to it. It's more like a foodstuff,
Therefore, a solid.
and therefore it's more like a solid, and therefore would be more like a container. Okay,
If there's a boat on the water and it has a mason, it already has a bunch of live people in it. And we witness this boat sink and everyone disappears. Does that change the,
What?
I said, if the boat sinks and everything disappears, so we don't see anybody.
Then it's too much cold.
so that's too much to home. That would be that situation. Until
If
the
it's on the
body,
bottom,
Unless somebody, until somebody knows about it.
okay, either somebody knows, about it, or unless, no,
And you know about it.
right, then you know about it, then it's not too much to home. Okay? Ve'im tertzelomar, and if you want to say de'ochlahu, that this deteriorated mush from an avela is still considered like a substance, right? Sheretz agav shichvat zera mahu. Okay, what happens if the sheretz is floating on
Human semen.
human semen, right? Okay, right,
And Sherrod semen.
right? Ve'im tetzelomar, and then you want to say kivan de me'it kara, since it's released from the body. Okay, in other words, an outside source. It is something still that has some substance to it. Havele ka'ochla. Therefore, it's like a solid. Sheretz agav mechatat. But what about if the sheretz is floating on mechatas?
So why do we say this? Body releases liquids all the time. Why does it have to be? solid?
Right,
We're not talking, we're not talking about blood, we're not talking
Right.
about urine.
Okay, in other words,
Semen, when it's in water, sort of solidifies.
okay. In other words, it's going to be, still have some sense of substance, as opposed to something else that's going to be immediately liquid and therefore dissolve into the water itself. Okay, that's the point. Wait, we're not done with this Gemara yet. Okay, ki achla sheretz al gav mechatas. Okay, so what is unique about mechatas? Okay, it's more than just
It's like-
plain water. Okay,
It's got.
it's got ash, it's got something in it that still might make us think,
May remain on. the
okay, that
surface.
it might not be totally disintegrated dissolved into the source of water.
The halacha
I mean, that's an,
assumes,
who
Rabbi
may have
Green,
to soften al gavi hamayim.
Right,
Rabbi Green, the halacha assumes that if you pour water into other water gently enough,
it's
it
good.
stays there. Because there's a Tosfos that talks about if fresh water is, the Mediterranean is a kosher mikvah. But if, say, a boat offloads fresh water, and then someone tries to toggle in that spot, that's
It's
not
not
called
acceptable.
tefillah because the dumped in water doesn't dissipate.
That's contrary to physics. I don't know about.
Then physics is wrong.
No, there are places
There are
where,
halachas that have nothing to do with what we perceive. to
okay,
be
no, there
reality.
are natural places. Okay, I don't remember the exact location, but I know there are places where fresh water and salt water, okay, do come
Remains
That's
together.
called an
And they, what?
That's where rivers dump into the ocean.
Yeah,
So there's-
okay. All right, and they do remain separate. Okay,
And it's used as a mikvah.
okay, so,
All right, let's go.
okay, so what happens? Ki ochla sheretz al gav mechatat, umechatat safin al gabe mayim, and that ash water, I'm gonna use that for the mechatas, floats, mahu, what? Lo yadinan, we don't know, teku, okay? We don't come to any conclusion after all this. Why? Because it's all theoretical. All right, now, Amar Rav
In
Hamnun.
reality, we have to go with Chumrah in all these cases.
Okay, so Rav Hamnuna is going to pick up and raise a question about, immersion. About immersion in the Nazir va'oseh Pesach. Those were the two, remember who we said. We talked about them. Shahalchu b'kever hat, right? And what happens? Hat tahom b'shvi'i shelahem. That what happens? They walked over this grave, all right?
That nobody knew.
And it was a kever tahom. It was a grave that people were not aware of, all right? And when did they do this? B'shvi'i shelahem. On the seventh day, of their Tahara process, exactly. All right. Tahorim, says Rav Hamnuna. They should be considered tahor. Now what happens? My tama, what's the reasoning? Delo alima tumas hatahom lemesta. Because he may argue, Rav Hamnuna, that it's not powerful enough, the tuma associated with a tahom situation, this kever tahom, to make them forfeit. However, Meitiv Rava challenges him with the following: Yarad letaher mitumas hames. If a person, went, to immerse, to remove, to purify themselves from tumas mace.
We don't know what they went in.
L'taher mitumas hames. What happens? Tameh. Our Mishnah said that person remains in the status of tuma. Shechazkat tameh, tameh, because the presumption of their being tameh in that situation is they remain tameh. Shechazkat tahor, tahor, that the chazaka, that the presumption of being tahor is tahor. So Rav Hamnuna responds, Amarle, modina lach, I will acknowledge that view. Under what situation? Benazir shemechusar tiglachat, regarding the Nazirite who did not have their shaving done yet. In that case. Now, Rava comes back to him. Amarle Rava, af ana modinalach, and I will acknowledge your point of view, right? Ba'oseh Pesach de lo mechusar, that the one who performed their korban Pesach also doesn't have to forfeit. In other words, their korban Pesach is still going to be,
Retroactively.
right? Velo klum, Now, right, so that's the case, and therefore does not render that korban Pesach invalid. However, what?
He didn't yet. I'm just
Okay,
looking.
yeah. However, says the Gemara, Amarle Abaye, and here's where the Gemara gets a little more technical. I did not write down the note to look at in Art Scroll, if you have Art Scroll, but I think it's
64B1.
that sounds like right. It's one of the first ones towards the top of the notes. Amarle Abaye. But so Abaye responds, Vaha mechusar ha'erev shemesh. But says Abaye, what about in that situation where the person is still lacking part of the process of tahara because they're supposed to wait till nightfall? They're lacking that. So wouldn't you say then, since they're right? So wouldn't you say then that their process is not completed, and as a result, that's the issue. They should forfeit. Amarle, so what happens? Rava responds, Shimsha mimela arva. The sun is going to set anyway. In other words, that's not within the power of the person. That is beyond their situation. What happens? Ba'af Abaye hadarbe. And so with that answer, Abaye also recants his argument. The Tanya, as taught elsewhere in a Braita, Yom La'ot, on the day of the purification. And now we're dealing with a situation, if I remember, of a woman who gave birth. Okay, and the question of what happens at a certain point if the woman has a miscarriage. Yom La'ot, Tavi, at the completion of the time period, based on whether she has a male or a female child, she has to bring a certain offering. Toch Mila'ot, but if she were to have a miscarriage, okay, during what? Before she's completed that time frame, right? Lo tavi, she need not bring the offering at that time. Yachol lo tavi aleda shelifnei mila'ot. It's possible we might think that she does not have to bring that offering regarding her birth, okay, if she had given birth before the completion of that full term time. Aval tavi aleda shela'achar mila'ot. But she would have to bring, okay, if she gave birth,
It's a stillbirth.
okay, after that time. In other words, normally she has the time frame, okay, but what happens that in that point it could be a stillbirth, a miscarriage, whatever. V'tipater mishtehen. Okay, so let her become exempted with two of them. Talmud Loma, but our text elsewhere says, Umelaot Yemei Tahara, that she must bring it at the completion of her Tahara term. Okay. Now remember again, it's one thing for a male, one thing for female. 40, I think, for correct me if I'm wrong. 40 for male and 80 for female. Okay. Biyom Laot Tavi, that on the day of that completion she brings. Toch Melaot Lo Tavi, which would imply, okay, during that process, if she's not completed, she would not bring. Amar Rav Kahana, says Rav Kahana, Shaniha. All right, it's different here. The Michasra Korban. Why? Because she would be missing, lacking the Korban. Okay.
How
Hatam,
many births she has within the 80 days?
She has to bring a korban after.
right. Hatam Nami Mechasra Ha'erev Shemesh. But here too, can't we argue and say that they're lacking then till sundown, till nightfall? Amarle Abaye. Abaye responds the answer that we saw from Rava earlier. Shimsha Mimela Arva. Okay, that the sun is going to set on its own. Okay, and therefore, since it's beyond the control of the person, it doesn't apply. Okay, all right. I just want to just point out real quickly in the next Mishnah. I just want to go to a tiny bit because I wanted to answer point to Sid, to earlier question about how do you sometimes differentiate between a Jew and a Gentile. Okay, and I just want to tie it in and then we'll finish up. Matnitin, our newest Mishnah says, Hamotse mate betchila. Okay, one has found in a particular place for the very first time.
First encounter.
Okay, with a corpse, mushkav kedarko, and it's lying in its appropriate means. Now, that Art Scroll had a note. I think it was 64B3, note number 31, okay, that Jews were buried in a grave in a certain manner, with the legs outstretched and the arms crossed on the bottom. Okay, so that's how you knew it was a Jewish grave. Okay, so otherwise that wasn't the case. All right, but I just wanted to point that out because you asked that question. Okay, what happens if it said the Mishnah is going to go on? Not lo ve'et fusato. You can move it, but you have to take the earth along with it. Okay, move that. All right. Shnayim, if you find two graves, no linet fusatan. You take their the bones and you take the earth with them. Right.
and-
Matzash.
And surrounding. dirt.
Okay, surround the dirt along with it, right? Matzah shlosha, but if and when you find 3 graves, okay, then we're gonna pick up this Mishnah tomorrow, because then the question is, did you find an entire, let's call it graveyard, a graveyard zone, okay? And that's what we're going to see tomorrow.
That's like, for example, moving mace.
Okay, and we're going to get to that, into that information tomorrow, okay? Right. All right,
Very important that everybody should please try to vote.
okay, if you did not vote when you left the Minyan this morning, please make sure to go over to vote. Now, you can agree the fact that it's going to allow us to use technological means and vote yes, or you can disagree and say, and vote no, but please at least sign in and do some vote. No, that is the only issue. What?
The voting and the meter.
Right, that's the only issue,
Voting, vote electronically, meter electronically.
right.
Do we have?